Oh my goodness, it is another new year.
Happy New Year.
Time flies when you're having fun. I cannot believe it. It's already 2024.
Woohoo.
I'm very, very excited because obviously we're going to keep doing these reviews into 2024, keep doing Good Omens content. We're going to find other things to do as well, but this is kind of like what we're doing right now. And so, yeah, this is going to be episode 2. This is kind of the first episode
Ding.
that is one of the mini-sodes. So the next 3 episodes are all, it's kind of weird. They call them mini-sodes as like part of the episode, but it all kind of blends together. So I was kind of trying to figure out like, how did I want to talk about this for this video? How did we want to go through this? In my head, I thought, okay, well, let's just, instead of doing it all like how it goes linearly, I wanted to do it like, here is the main story and then here is the mini-sode. I don't know if that's the best way to go about it, but that's the way I wanted to go about it. And this is going to be the first episode that I'm kind of doing from memory. I watched like little snippets to catch up some things, but for the most part, I went completely by my own memory of this episode. And I feel like we've watched it enough times that we can do that. But I just thought it would be kind of funny to just see if I could, go straight by my memory. So if I'm wrong, I'm sure you're going to tell me, but I don't really care. Also, apparently everyone felt the need to tell me that, well, there is some contention, but most people seem to think that Crowley's statement to Shax is that Heaven doesn't talk to Aziraphale anymore, not that he doesn't talk to Aziraphale anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like a lot of different people have different arguments about it.
It's kind of that thing. You hear what you hear.
Yeah. And I guess the only way to know is like going
to
based
look at
on the captions, although Neil had said, like in the beginning, I know they were very wrong, so but we'll see. Anyway, so I just wanted to talk about that because a lot of people had a lot to say about that whole statement. Look, I am not an expert on all of this. I am just one bitch with a lot of opinions.
This
so
is very true.
Without having access to the script.
No one knows 100%.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so let us get into this. First things first. Hello, sinners, and hail Sappho. It's your hostess with the mostest, Narcissa DeVille. I do weekly Good Omens videos, and right now we are doing our review of episode 2 with my lovely co-hostess, Mother DeVille.
Hi.
So the first part of the episode, like I said, we're going to start with the present main story, because technically the first part of the episode does start with the Job situation, because technically it starts with Crowley talking to a goat, and it's called the Land of Uz. I don't know how you pronounce that. I'm so sorry. I always want to say Oz in my head. So that's technically where it starts. No, it's Uzi.
Oh.
That's technically where it starts, but we're going to start with the main storyline, and then we'll go and do the Job part after.
So hold steady.
Yeah. So this is not going to be...
We're going off course.
Yeah, well, we always do, so I feel like it's kind of appropriate.
It's like, have you met us?
Yeah, exactly. How long have you been watching these videos? So I kind of love, because it does start in the bookshop with Gabriel, who's now living full time in the bookshop. He's trying to help Aziraphale kind of...
Oh my God, the books.
Yeah, he's trying to help him with the books. I do think it's kind of funny that, he's like, I'm going to rearrange everything in alphabetical order. And Aziraphale goes by author. And he's like, what's author? And I'm like, okay, but you know how to say all these other words. Why is that specific word you don't know how to say?
And then you see title words on the outside.
Yeah.
Okay. So what would make you think in your head it's going to be the first letter of the first word inside the book?
I think it's hilarious.
You're like, what?
I think it's actually hilarious. And it's funny
because... technically, wouldn't it be the chapter?
No, because you don't count that. You're talking about the first sentence.
How would he know?
Well, because he opens the books and reads the first sentence.
Oh, okay.
Well, here's what makes it funny is Aziraphale gets annoyed at first, and he's like, how would anybody... Never mind, it's fine. And I'm like, busy. You don't want anyone reading your books anyway, so what do you care?
Because he cares for himself, because he knows, oh, dear God. Yeah. And then it's kind of like, okay, it's going to keep you busy for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
Go nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And so while he's organizing the books, he's humming the tune Every Day, which is by...
Oh, the one that was in the plane crash?
Yes.
Jerry?
No.
Okay. Has the glasses.
Mm-hmm. Who was apparently... I think we've talked about this before, because Every Day was originally going to be the main theme song of the show. Like in the script, that is what's listed. And it's really funny because I did not know this. He was actually, even in the 1950s, a huge ally for the queer community, which is really amazing. And you don't see that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I keep wanting to say Billy Idol. That's also not correct.
No.
Is it something with a B? Am I just pulling that out of my ass?
No, it is Buddy Holly.
There we go. Okay, so
Ding.
it does start with
and
a
I
B.
didn't look it up.
No.
I remember.
Yes.
You know, when I watched that great movie with Patsy Cline was in it.
Mm-hmm.
Not coal miner's daughter. But
Loretta
Loretta Lynn was in it.
Oh, no, the other one?
Oh, no. Oh, excuse me. The movie that Reese Witherspoon did with...
Walk the Line?
Walk the Line. Why do I have a New York accent? Because I'm from New York. Yes.
Well, but it comes and goes.
But when they were doing some of the acts, there was it that one? Yes.
I don't know. I never watched it.
Buddy Holly was in it, and I'm trying to remember if that's the one where they got in the plane crash.
Yes, he did get in a plane crash.
Yes, but I was trying to think, did they show it on that movie?
Klein. Yeah, because I remember.
Or was it the Patsy Cline movie? Because I've watched both.
Well, she was also in Coal Miner's Daughter. She was friends with Loretta Lynn.
Yes.
Anyway, not the point. The point is,
we always go off on
tangents.
Buddy
Holly. And that was the original theme for the show, and that's what he's humming. And so Aziraphale's like, how do you know that song? Where did you hear that song? We're so ridiculous.
We're starting off 2024.
The same as ever.
Yeah, right.
Consistency. That's what we are.
That is key.
That's our motto for 2024. Consistency. We're consistently terrible at YouTube.
Terrible. Speak for yourself.
What were we even saying?
We were talking about
Jim is humming it.
Day.
And Aziraphale's like, where did you hear that? And he's like, I don't know. I just made it up.
Yes.
And Aziraphale's like, yeah, no, you fucking didn't.
I just made it up.
Yeah.
Came up with it.
Yeah, because he's dumb.
Can we get it published?
Yeah, right. Can we copyright this? I think I made this up. I'm like, okay. And so, of course, Aziraphale goes to the record shop to see Maggie to kind of get some information about the song.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it's the first episode that You Don't Own Me is playing in the background, which I kind of love because Leslie Gore, lesbian icon, we stand. I do think it's really funny because he goes into the record shop and says, hey, what do you know about this song? And she just starts sobbing because, she's like so in love with Nina. And it's funny, but also kind of fucked up because she's talking about it and Aziraphale looks over and he's like, yeah, I'm kind of fresh out of miracles. And I'm like, girl, I know you're an angel and it doesn't mean the same thing to you, but it sounds really fucking shady to say that to someone.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it would take a literal miracle for you to fall in love, bitch. Like, damn. Just like
you deep dived on that one.
Life.
Some of us just take it for what it is, but you deep dive and need to.
But that's how it sounds to her.
Yes.
And she even says it's not your job to fix my, pathetic love life or whatever she says.
Okay.
So like she took it that way too. But it is funny because she has like all this information about it. Buddy Holly was on the B side of the Peggy Sue soundtrack. Why that's stuck in my head now, I don't know.
I think Peggy Sue was one of the biggest songs he's ever done.
No, but I'm just saying, I think it's funny I remember all of that. And then he asks if she has a copy and she goes, well, too many actually. I send all these records to this pub and they send me back copies of every day. And I think it's so funny because she goes, they keep saying it like changes to them or something like that.
Yeah.
It's madness, but they're Scottish, so whatever. I was like, oh, okay, girl.
But then Aziraphale takes it like,
yeah, he takes it as a mystery. It's a clue.
A clue.
I love the way he says it.
I love
the
way he says
funny.
A clue.
So then we get the angels coming down to confront Aziraphale about the plume that they noticed at the end of the last episode. They tell them that it's a 27 Lazarus miracle, which is to say that it's like, could bring 27 men back from the dead. They don't believe for a second that he was able to do it himself.
Correct.
I do love that at some point in the episode, I think Beelzebub comes up to Crowley and is like, yeah, they told us about this miracle that happened. And he's like, well, how do you know I didn't do it? I just think it's so funny because they're both like, yeah, we both individually did this. We did not have help at all from each other. It's totally fine. Don't look into it. And, Seraquiel is very shady about it, which I think is kind of funny. She's like, don't tell me you did it. And he's like, yep, it was me. I did it. And then he's looking down at the record and he's like, I did it because Maggie and Nina are in love.
Yeah.
It's a thing that people do, which is really funny because, If I'm understanding
Does
correctly.
he say people or humans?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
The phrasing doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But what I think is funny is that, in the first season, it's kind of this whole idea that angels are full of love and they can sense love. Clearly, these angels, as I've said before, have no fucking clue what love is. Yeah, exactly. So it's funny that they wouldn't know what that meant because they look completely like, what?
If they saw a harp or was given a harp, they would probably throw it down and step on it. That's how much they care about love and harmony.
Oh my God, that's funny. They look very suspicious. And I love that Michael looks at Jim/Gabriel and is like, don't I know you? And you see his earful in the background like, oh, fuck, they're going to figure it out.
And he goes, yes.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, shit, now we're fucked. And he's like, you just met me. I'm the co-bookseller. And they're like, oh, okay, whatever. And so the angels tell him that they're going to have someone check in on him.
Yeah.
And Aziraphale's like, that's very sensible. Okay, sure. And then, of course, he decides that he wants to meet Crowley in the bar across the street, which is, of course, the Dirty Donkey Bar. That name I cannot ever get over. Every time I say it, I'm like, I feel dirty. Which I guess is appropriate.
I like it.
You would.
Makes me want to go eat all.
Well, you are a jackass.
Thank you.
I love that Crowley looks like he's in a date night outfit. Like his outfit has changed for this. He's got the long turtleneck, which he can pull off. Not a lot of people can pull that off. If you don't have a lot of neck, it just doesn't work. So I love that he's like, hey, we never go to the pub. And Aziraphale's like, we're in the pub now. And so
he kept saying it almost like skipping. We're going to the pub.
Yeah. He's very excited. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a date night type thing is how it feels. And of course, this is, accentuated. Is
you like my turtleneck?
Not quite.
Opens it up.
Yeah,
that's how I don't do a turtleneck.
Yeah.
Or
you're like, I can't with you. I'm trying to talk here. You're in your own little world. You're on one today. Okay. Anyway, so it's accentuated that it's like a date night thing with Aziraphale asking for his drink, but he puts his hand on Crowley's chest and then drags it down. I'm like, damn, girl, you are like going for it. And I'm not mad about it. We love to see it.
We do.
And I've said this before. I am very curious, like, was that in the script exactly? Or was that just Michael Sheen just being
hey,
like,
they put it on, they went off the cuff.
Make this bitch as gay as possible. And you know what? That's totally fine.
Because they know we're here for it.
Yeah, exactly. So I love Aziraphale kind of waves the other person who's sitting there away. He takes a seat and Crowley goes to the bar to order himself a whiskey and Aziraphale a sherry. And he says a sherry for Lady Bracknell, which I think is very funny. And I love that Mr. Brown, who is like one of the shopkeepers, comes over and sits with Aziraphale and kind of basically talks to himself the whole time.
Yeah.
As people like that are wont to do. He convinces him to, do the Street Traders Association meeting.
Yeah.
Aziraphale clearly is not that interested. But I love that when Mr. Brown sits down, you see Crowley in the back like, what's going on over there? Like his little snaky senses were tingling that someone was sitting with his angel and he's like, what's happening over there? And I love it because Aziraphale does look back and Crowley's like, what's going on? And then he comes by, he plops his drink down and he's like, hello, who the fuck are you? You're in my spot. What do you want? And so, of course, he's surprised that Aziraphale is going to be, doing the monthly meeting, or I guess it's yearly meeting, isn't it?
Yes.
I'm
and how it turns into a ball.
Well, that's later. So I love that, Mr. Brown kind of talks himself through it and then leaves and Crowley sits down and Aziraphale's like, see, this is why we don't go to the pub. And Crowley's like, it was your idea. I just think that's so funny. So they start talking about, why they're not in the coffee shop. And he's like, well, it's about the woman in the coffee shop. Like, it's about Nina. It's about the whole situation. I told the angels that I made them fall in love. And Crowley's just like, why? And Aziraphale's like, it was the first thing I can think of. I'm like, okay, girl. Sure. I love that then they're like trying to figure out how to actually do it. And at first Crowley's like, well, just wave your fingers about and make them fall in love. And he's like, it doesn't work that way. So then they start talking about Jane Austen. And this is one of the lines that I love.
Oh my God.
I love the idea that Crowley is like, what do you mean Jane Austen wrote Because, like, you remember Jane Austen, he's like, yeah, master spy, bootlegger, organized this diamond robbery. And Aziraphale's like, she wrote novels. And he's like, I'm sorry, what now? What do you mean wrote novels? I love that whole
Jane
exchange.
did? Like that Jane?
That fucking
It
piece
was
of work. Yeah, I
so
love
funny.
it. I love it. It's so funny. And he's like so shocked by it. And Aziraphale's like, they were really good. And Crowley's like, I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
And then they talk about having a ball, you know, because at first Crowley's like, oh, if we just get them in the rain together, they'll realize they're in love and that'll be that. And Aziraphale's like, yeah,
Does
no.
the rain
I think,
equal love? I'm confused.
well, no, it's more like, you know, you see a lot of romance movies and there's this huge love
There's
confession in the
always
rain.
in the rain,
And that's
yeah.
what he's going
You're right.
for.
Okay, I get it.
I think it's really funny. And I mean, it doesn't work. We'll see that later. I think in the next episode we see that it doesn't work, but they try, and that's what matters. But of course, Aziraphale suggests the ball. I love that when Aziraphale's talking about the record, he keeps calling it the clue or a clue. And Crowley's like, please stop calling it that. Or if you have to call it that, stop capitalizing the letter, which I think is so funny.
I know.
Because only Aziraphale can do that. Only he can figure out how to say things. Like how he said
It's
rainbow,
a
like it's a new word.
Yeah.
A rainbow. Like how do you figure out how to say things like they're a word that nobody's ever heard of before?
Theatrical training.
Yeah.
You
It's a talent. Yeah.
A clue.
Yeah. And so Crowley's just like so annoyed by it, which I think is hilarious. And then, of course, you know, back in the bookshop, Crowley sees the Jane Austen books and he's so surprised by them. He's like, huh, okay, I'll never get used to the way people are just not like you expect.
That's so funny.
I know, right? So then, of course, you know, they start questioning, I almost said Job. They start questioning Jim to like try and remember things. And then he has this moment where he kind of goes into a trance. His eyes turn purple again.
Yeah.
And he has this quote that is apparently, you know, what God said to Job. And that's kind of what starts the whole backdrop to the Job thing. But there are still a few more scenes that I'm going to continue in. Because technically it does go to the Job episode, then it comes back into the present, and then it goes, you know, little. But I do want to keep this all in just one thing because otherwise it's going to get confusing. One of the points where they kind of come back to the present, Aziraphale thinks Crowley is right behind him, and Jim is just like, he left. And Aziraphale's like, oh, okay. And he goes, you used to be just awful. And Gabriel's like, well, am I awful now? And Aziraphale's like, I'm not sure. And it's kind of interesting. Again, I don't know, as a shorthand for, you know, the redemption arc thing, forgetting his memory and having, you know, basically being dependent on Aziraphale to do everything for him. I'm just kind of like, I'm not going to say that it's lazy because I don't want to read Neil Gaiman like that. I just feel like it's still, I don't feel like his redemption arc is very much earned. Yeah. I want to see him actually apologize, and maybe in season 3, but for right now, I'm just like, but I also don't like him enough that I would care. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree.
I'm kind of rambling.
No, it's accurate.
I love that at one point, Nina and Crowley have a conversation about rain and how she feels about sudden storms. And she goes, yeah, that's an odd question. All right. And then he says something and she's like, it's like you've seen into my inner soul. I just love how sarcastic she is.
Yeah.
And he goes with it. And I'm like, you were just making fun of Shax for not understanding sarcasm, and yet you're not understanding it here. Like, I cannot with you guys. Like, it's so ridiculous. And this is also the scene where after that, he's walking back to his Bentley and Aziraphale pops up like a little meerkat. I think it's adorable. And Crowley's like, well, can I take you anywhere? And Aziraphale's like, yeah, I thought I might take the car. And he's like, what car?
Yeah.
And Aziraphale's like, our car. I love that he calls it our car. I think that's so cute. And Crowley's like, we don't have a car. Aziraphale's like, of course we do. Isn't she a beauty? And Crowley's like, this is my car. And then Aziraphale's like, well, yeah, technically it's your car. Just like technically that's my bookshop, but we both get plenty of use out of it. I'm like, what does that mean? Explain yourself.
Explain yourself.
I think it's so funny. And then Crowley's like, no, you cannot drive my car. And Aziraphale's like, no, but I can. I got my license 90 years ago. They didn't even require tests, but I insisted.
And you could almost picture him going, yeah. I want some sort of test.
Right.
What? You know, a test.
A driver's
to show
test.
what I know.
Yeah, exactly.
So are you saying you invented driver's tests?
Yeah, apparently.
Was it your insistence of it?
Yeah, right.
And then they're like, we should do that.
Mm-hmm.
you take a specific test.
Yeah.
Show that you know.
And I love that, Crowley is, of course, like, no, absolutely not. It's never going to happen. But he's going to give in. Like, there's not a chance in hell that he's not going to give in. Yeah, exactly. I think that's really cute. But that's kind of the end of the present main story. Next, we're going to go into the Job storyline. We start, like I said, in the land of Ooze. Crowley is talking to a goat. A lot of people have said it kind of seems like he's having almost a conversation like with himself, because obviously he has a big motif with goats, especially in this season. He clearly seems to like them.
Yeah.
But he's having this whole thing about like how, I bet you're wondering why you have to die because, the so-called God that loves you is asking for it and all this.
Yeah.
And you don't know that it's a goat at first. You think it's just a person.
Mhm.
And then you realize he picks up the goat. It's really kind of cute. I love that when Aziraphale comes in, he's got like this, it's very like biblical and artistic. I actually saw there's like an art piece that this scene is based off of where Aziraphale has like this gold, like, I don't know what you'd call them, like starburst kind of happening around him.
Oh, okay.
And he's telling Crowley to stop what he's doing. And then he sees that it's Crowley and he's like, oh, it's you. Hey, what's up? Where you been? I just think that's so funny. Then he's like, well, I kind of have to get back to work. So sorry about this. And Crowley's like, yeah, whatever. And so he tells him like, hey, stop. And Crowley's like, no, I have a permit. And Aziraphale's like, I'm sorry, what now? I love the idea that heaven and hell and demons and angels run on permits for shit like this. I just think that's so ridiculous.
But I love the fact that, he's telling him that say that he killed, and then all of a sudden the birds are.
Well, that's later in the scene.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh,
we're
thought
still
that was happening then.
No. Because it starts off with they're talking about it, and at first he thinks Crowley is kidding, and he's like, no. Here's the scroll. and it goes all across the mountain.
That's right.
And all this other shit.
All the things that God told him he had to do.
Yeah. And I love that he says Satan and his diabolical minions. Me. He's like, oops, sorry, that's me. Guilty. And so, Aziraphale reads it and he's kind of like, what the fuck? And then he just drops the scroll, which I think is so funny. He's like, I'm a demon. I could be lying. And he gets this spherical ball just appears like a Death Star, which is really random. And it does have Star Wars sounding sound effects, which I think is really interesting. And he's like, well, let's see if it's legit. And so he shoots off all these like lasers from this ball thing, and it like hits all of the goats and destroys them. And he goes, seems legit to me. I'm like, he is such, again, it's another moment that's very Muppety. It's very camp this season. And I'm not mad about it. I love a bit of camp.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
Some people would also say cartoony. I think Muppety is more fun. Anyway, so Aziraphale's like, okay, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we doing here? And of course, it's later when they run into each other again in the actual Job compound, whatever the fuck you want to call it, that he's, they have this whole showdown because Crowley is supposed to kill Job's children. And Aziraphale's like, you don't want to do this. And Crowley's like, you don't fucking know me. Don't tell me what I do and don't want to do. Yeah. And he's like, just like I wanted to kill those goats. And then Aziraphale's like, all right, well, fine. They kind of had their little tiff yet again. And, the 50th breakup at this point. And they've known each other for, 5 minutes. And I love that Aziraphale's just about to leave and Crowley thinks he's gotten away with it. And then he hears the crows making a weird noise and they sound like goats. And he's like, what the fuck is going on? So he turns around and he is like listening for a second. And then he, does his little miracle and the crows turn into the goats. And I love how Aziraphale just looks so proud of himself. He's like, well, okay, you're as bad as you say you are. Uh-huh. I love it. He's so like smug in that moment. And it is kind of cute. It shouldn't be, but it is. Yeah. There is also a moment that I kind of forgot about in which Aziraphale goes up to heaven to be like, hey, what the fuck? Is this real? Like, are they really going to take all of his shit? Yeah. And, they're like, yeah. And so the angels go through it with him. He's happy when he realizes, okay, he's going to get all his stuff back once it's done. And then they're like, oh, we're not killing anything important. Just, his cows and chickens and children. And he's like, I'm sorry, what now? You want to run that by me again? Yeah. And then.
And that's another scene where you're like, okay, what's his name is completely stupid.
Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
is completely stupid.
Well, and this is the thing that I said, and I talked about this last week, that I don't feel like this episode makes Gabriel any more likable. And if
No.
anything, it makes him less likable. I feel like there was such an opportunity here. If you're going to do these things where, you want to make Gabriel more likable,
And they
I
have
feel
to
like, or do
spoon
the
feed
redemption
all
arc.
the things for him to know, oh, yeah, yeah, I did that. I
Yeah.
did that.
Well, but that's what I'm saying is, like, if you want to give him this whole redemption
Yeah.
arc thing, I feel like the way to have done that would have been to make this a scene where he wasn't as big of a piece of shit as we saw in season one.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's even more unlikable in this scene. And it's just like, that makes your redemption arc less deserving. Like, you have to do something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like they kind of threw this at us and we're like, okay, this is redemption arc. Take it. Take it. And it's like, okay, I guess I gotta, but I don't really want it. So that kind of bugged me.
Yeah.
And then, there's a whole conversation about how, oh, they're gonna have 7 more children. And Aziraphale's like, his wife is like 58.
Yeah.
She's not gonna, have more kids. Like, what the fuck are you talking
Or
about?
they'll be happy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, I think they liked their original children,
Yeah.
but like, okay.
Yeah.
And I think it is, like, I understand why this story is important, because it's important to kind of show Aziraphale's own, questioning of
Yeah.
heaven.
I agree.
Although,
I agree.
when we see that in the future he constantly still goes back to them, still learns nothing from shit like this, it's kind of frustrating, because it's like he makes two steps forward, 10 steps back. And I know I've talked about it before, there's a whole religious trauma element to it. There's a whole kind of like cult element to heaven. I think it's very fair to say it's kind of a cult.
Yeah.
They're constantly abusing him and dragging him back every time he gets anywhere away. So I do get that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make it any less frustrating in a story, because
Yeah.
it's like you want to see him succeed.
Yeah.
And we'll get there, I'm sure, but it's like, oh God, okay, fine. So then, of course, we finally get the scene where we meet Job's children. The less said about them, the better. I did not think they were in the least bit likable. Great little actors, fine, whatever. They're just not likable characters. And that's, fine.
Sometimes that happens.
Yeah. And I think that was the point. They were trying to show them they're kind of spoiled. They think they're untouchable because their dad is God's favorite. I love when Crowley's like, nice kids, like, what the fuck? And it is funny because at first, they don't realize he's a demon. It's the youngest one who figures out that he's a demon.
Yeah.
And again, he has this like Muppety moment where he's like, yes, sent here to destroy you all. I will say this, I love that he's kind of got this like parental moment, let's say, with the kids, where he's like, ready? And then he starts to fire. Like, he kind of gives them a little bit of warning that he's going to do it. And his ear feels like, wait, what the fuck just happened? You said you weren't going to do this. And he's like, I'm a demon. I lied. And I love the kids are like, can't you help us? And his ear feels like, he's got a permit. And I'm like, if I were about to burn up, I'd be like, bitch, I don't care. Fuck your permit. Put out this fire. What's wrong with you? Aziraphale stands up to him. He knows Crowley better than that. He knows he's not really going to let them die. So he kind of, collapses everything in, and they fall into the basement with the food and all of that. I love that very quickly Crowley's like annoyed by the children. He's like, all right, you know what? No, you're all going to be lizards. And we're going to be done here. Or geckos? I don't really know. They're like leopard geckos, I think, actually, which is very cute and fancy and whatever. It's the only time those kids are tolerable. I love that the youngest one was like, can I be one too? And he's like, you haven't annoyed me yet. And she's like, but can I be? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. And turns her into a blue gecko like she asked. And I love that, like, the two of them, as there's like this hurricane going on up above the house.
Yeah.
And they're kind of having their conversation. And so as Crowley slowly gets him to try food for the first time. And Aziraphale's looking at it and he's like, oh, gross. No, not touching that.
Yeah.
And he's like, wait, are you trying to tempt me? And Crowley's like, an angel can't be tempted, can they? And Aziraphale's like, no. And he's like, okay, then just try the fucking food. It's not like you can get drunk on food, which is not true, because you absolutely can. Everybody knows that. But whatever. Anyway. So, Aziraphale's like, fine, I'll try a little bit. And he tries it.
The piece
and he eats it like, literally like that. And it's so gross. And then he just devours it like someone who has been starving their entire life but never knew, which is kind of what he was.
Yeah.
I love the way Crowley is just looking at him like,
Go, man, go.
Yeah, he's having such a good time. And then he starts drinking. And I love that still at this point, Aziraphale doesn't want to touch alcohol, but he will eat that whole entire fucking ox, which is wild to me because those are fucking huge. And so, Crowley's like sitting in a hay bale type of thing, drinking himself silly. And, Aziraphale's like, come on, you're a little bit on our side. And Crowley's like, yeah, no, I'm not. I am on my own side. And Aziraphale's like, that sounds kind of lonely. And Crowley's like, no, it's not lonely. Which, I mean, it kind of is. And he admits as much later in the episode.
Yeah.
But it is kind of funny. So then, of course, after all that, after everything has just completely gone to shit, I love that when Aziraphale and Crowley do leave the basement, you see them walking on the ground, and Crowley like almost trips for a second. He's like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
It's really funny. And then Job is talking to God, and we, hear the whole conversation. He's asking all these questions, and Aziraphale's like, I don't think he's getting any answers. And Crowley's like, yeah, but just to be able to ask the question.
Yeah.
He never got that opportunity. And I think there's maybe a little jealousy there.
Yeah.
So then, of course, we get to the next big silly scene in all of this, which is like, Job and his wife are kind of breaking down because they think their children are dead.
Yeah. But then are they down from heaven? Right?
Yeah. The angels come down and are like, hey, yeah, you lost everything, but you're going to get all this other stuff. Isn't that great? And they're like, I mean, I guess, like, whatever. Yeah. And they're asking about their kids. And, Gabriel's like, yeah, I mean, your kids are dead. And Sidis is like furious. She's like, I'm sorry. What the fuck do you mean my kids are dead? Like, that is not okay.
Yeah.
And she's like ready to just completely like, no, fuck God if this is going to be the case. And I love that Crowley's like, whoa, 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 you don't want to do that. That never ends well. I think that's so funny. So of course, all the angels are like, who the fuck is this guy? And he's like, Bildad the Shuhite. Need any shoes?
So ridiculous.
It's so like the whole scene.
That was very Muppety.
Yes, it's very Muppety. It's very silly. And I love that, it's kind of Crowley and Aziraphale unofficially working together to help these people. And he's, lying and saying like, yeah, whatever, I can help you with this. Like, just go with it. And so, he gets Sidis to pull basically the ox ribs out of Job's chest, and it turns into their kids. And then there's the whole kind of moment where Gabriel's like, or no, I think it was Michael who was like, they're not babies. And Gabriel's like, no, they can come out at any size. Eve wasn't a baby, which I think is so funny because it just proves how fucking stupid they are and how like clueless they are about literally everything. And so then, of course, we get this moment where they're like, well, they seem like they're kids because the eldest kid doesn't want to say that it's not him. And they're all kind of like trying to figure out their story of like, if it's the new kids or not. And it's like, come on, people, just keep up. Yeah. Yes, and where is your, what is that called?
The what?
When you do yes, and what is that called?
Yes, and.
You've never heard of this? It's like it's a thing you do in like theater. Anyway, I did it in a theater class. So eventually they all get on board. They're like, yeah, they're the new kids, whatever. And, as Gabriel turns to Aziraphale and is like, are they really his new kids? And Aziraphale's like, yep, you had my word as an angel.
Oh.
And of course, he struggles to lie to them, especially when it's important, which I find funny.
Yeah.
Because again, he lied to God kind of easily enough, but he struggled to lie to those angels. But,
the terrible angels that are always so mean.
Who deserve to be lied to. I'm sorry. If you're going to be that dumb, like whatever, I don't feel bad for you.
Yes.
But anyway, so then of course we cut to Crowley and Aziraphale sitting on the beach. Aziraphale is kind of devastated because he thinks he's going to be taken to hell. He thinks he's going to be a demon because he lied.
Doesn't Crowley say, okay, are you ready?
No, he doesn't say anything.
He just
like
comes
that.
Up to him and he goes, I'm ready.
Yeah, he goes, oh, I know you're here to take me to hell. And Crowley's like, I'm not taking you to hell. I don't think you'd like it very much, which I think is so funny. And I love the line where I'm like you now. I lied to thwart the will of hell. I'm a demon. And Crowley's like, you think you're a demon with your curly little hair and your neat white. He's just, it's such a funny moment. Like, it's kind of shady, but it's really funny. And because Aziraphale's like fully crying, and Crowley's like, listen, I'm not going to tell anyone. So if you're not, nothing has to change.
Yeah.
And so they sit on the beach together
Hmm.
and look out at the ocean. And that is kind of how the episode ends, with the two of them. You know, Crowley does admit that he lied, that it can be kind of lonely being on your own.
Yeah.
But I mean, clearly they have each other, so it can't
Yeah.
be that lonely. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the episode. But yeah, that is the end of the episode. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment down below. Tell me, what is your thoughts about this episode? Do you like this episode? Do you like the format change that I did for this video? I would love to know what people think about that. I'm probably still going to do it anyway, but you know, hey, I love to hear people's thoughts. You can also subscribe to this channel or become a member of this channel. We have two tiers, the Our Side tier and the Ineffable tier. The Ineffable tier, you do get early access and behind the scenes content. You can also become a member of my Patreon. That's also a behind the scenes type of deal, and that's going to have special members only videos. Yeah, and until next time, stay devilish and see you next Tuesday.